Freedom Lovin'. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 83. And thanks for joining. Just a minute, I'm going to be talking about the concept of love and the book, The Alabaster Girl, which is something that I have been reviewing. I read it about a year and a half ago, and I'm looking at it again. I got some thoughts I wanted to share on the podcast. Just a few things I want to mention before that. There's a new group that I formed on Facebook for a few weeks ago. It's called Freedom Lovin' Quest. And I'd love for you to join it. If you're listening to this show and you are on Facebook, please look us up. It's just facebook.com/groups/freedomlovinquest, and that's lovin' without the G. And you can also find us by just looking for me on Facebook, Kevin Koskela, and then adding me as a friend, and then I can send you the link to that as well, or just add you to the group. So it'd be great to see you in there. We've got a really good group with a lot of discussion going on with freedom, a lot of different freedom concepts and ideas and things people are working on. So that is really fun stuff. Also, if you have a chance to give us a rating or review, I'm actually going to do my offer again of buying you a cup of coffee. If you want to do a quick review on iTunes, that would be awesome. And I will send you a Starbucks card. I have an app where I think I can just add you to the app, and then you get a free cup of coffee, or two, maybe even 2 cups of coffee. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But we can do this all through Facebook, actually. If you're not on Facebook, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But if you are, it's very easy. So you just add me as a friend, and then I can, via the app, I can actually give you credits for Facebook. And then you just walk into, or credits for Starbucks, and you just walk into your local Starbucks, and it's on your phone, and there's just it's either a barcode or a QR code, and then you can buy that Starbucks. And I use Bitcoin with this app. It's called Gift, G-Y-F-T, just in case you were wondering. So that is a really cool thing. And speaking of Bitcoin, it is up. Let me see. It is up today about $32, and it's been rallying like crazy lately. So for those of us that are in Bitcoin and that are investing and buying, that is an awesome thing. And it also is great there's been a lot of venture capital money going into Bitcoin related companies, and I think people were kind of wondering why is there this disconnect? Like, Bitcoin is obviously, it's just an amazing technology, and money's flowing into the companies that are doing things around Bitcoin, but the price was just stuck at like $225 to $250 for probably close to a year. So it was kind of like there was a huge disconnect. My theory on all that is that we were in a bear market for Bitcoin. It was in a bull market for a long time, and then it had this insane rally where it went over 1,000 like within just a matter of weeks. It went from a couple $100 to like $1,000, and it was so fast, and it was not a sustainable price. So then, of course, it crashed, and then it had to. I think that was where the bear market was really starting. That was the end of 2013, and then here we are 2 years later, and I think we're back into bull territory. So I imagine that this one is going to last for a while. It's not going to. It'll have pullbacks and slowdowns and things like that, like normal bull markets, but it won't have a crash for a while, or it won't have a significant downturn, I don't think, for a long time, or a meaningful downturn. I think there will be some shakeouts, like there always is, but people always ask me about Bitcoin when it's going up, or they talk about Bitcoin when it's going up, and then people will ask me like, when do you buy, or what's your strategy? And my strategy is just to buy when I have dollars, and I'm sort of looking at I'm just exchanging my dollars for Bitcoin, for an asset. So it's like one asset class for another asset class. And I believe much more strongly in Bitcoin than the US dollar, which is where I have most of my other money. So I think Bitcoin is something that is going to be around for a long time, and it is something that will increase in value because of its deflationary properties. So if you want to read more about it, there's a site called bitcoin.com. There's a whole bunch of other sites out there too where you can find out more about what it is, why it's deflationary, and why it's likely to do a lot better than the dollar in the coming years and decades. So anyway, that's something I could talk about all day long. I've done podcasts on Bitcoin. I won't talk about that anymore right now. But another thing I want to mention is I have a new site design on freedom11.com. I'd love to hear your feedback. It's kind of a more modern looking design than what I had before. That's just freedom11.com, and I switched some things around there, and there's a couple issues that we're still working through. So if you are interested in the LLC, I talked about that on a previous couple podcasts, on a New Mexico LLC. If you want to do business anonymously, just send me an email on that, because the form is not, right now it's down, so you can't purchase on the site. So just let me know if you're interested, and we can talk about it, and we can get you that easily through another method. So that's about it. I'd love to hear from you again, and I've been chatting with a lot of people from the Freedom Loving community, and it's been awesome, and I can't wait to meet some people in person. Love to at some point do like an event or something. I think that would be really fun, and travel somewhere cool and interesting, and of course warm, so we can sit under a palm tree and talk about freedom. So anyway, today is going to be about The Alabaster Girl. It's a book by Zan Perian, and it's a book I read in the summer of 2014, somewhere around that range. Maybe it was like spring, or late spring, early summer. It's a great book. It was a really powerful book for me at the time, and it's just as much today. And there's some things that I had forgotten that were in the book that I was reading, and I took some notes, and I wanted to kind of share the notes on the podcast and some of the things I was thinking about and reading. And so the book is 419 pages, I think, so it's a really long book, and it starts off a little bit slowly, but it builds, and there's so many nuggets of wisdom in there, and so many things that he says that I have believed and thought about and just could not express it in the way that he does in the book, but he puts it together. I don't agree with every single thing in the book, but I think it's really well done. And it's kind of written towards for guys that are trying to figure out women, but it's also, I think, a lot can be learned from women. And Zan claims to be an expert on women, so but it sounds like he backs it up pretty well, and it's a pretty well thought out book. I think it's missing a couple things, but he also lives the freedom lifestyle, so I think that's why it really resonates with me. So he calls himself a gypsy, and he's traveled all over, bounced around the world, and lived in all sorts of places, and given up all his possessions, and he actually moved to, I think it was Nicaragua for a while, and lived among a tribe and had nothing and didn't even have a cell phone or anything, and did that for a while. And I think he's a little more settled down now in Romania. I think he's been there for a few years. But anyway, the book is great. I highly recommend it, The Alabaster Girl. And there's a lot of other books that are around this kind of category that I can also recommend, but this is the one that I'm kind of focused on right now. So I wanted to read a few different passages and just briefly talk about them. So, and one thing that I have been thinking about, and I talk about this sometimes, is this idea that people think true love is marriage. But the problem is with that is that, did love exist before marriage was invented? Because marriage obviously it was invented at some point. Now, I don't know the whole history, and I don't really care that much about. I know that it was invented originally for some sort of way to control people, but that isn't really why I bring this up. I think it's just this idea of love being marriage, or love being somehow equated to something that's kind of external, that's external to us. But I think it's much deeper than that. And I think that just looking at it as like there's this ultimate goal of love, and that means that you must go into a church and with somebody, and then you must have you have to say certain things, and then you have to sign certain papers, and that means that you have love. Then I think that's where things kind of go astray, and I'll talk about that a little more. But so he has a definition, kind of a sort of a loose definition of love, which I wanted to start with, and I'll put a link to the book in the show notes, and if I can, I'll put the page number as well. But it says, quote, "When we talk about love, maybe we only mean one thing: to be loved. Maybe all of our discontent in affairs of the heart is really just the longing for someone to desire us, for someone to feel us lovable. Men spend their time and money on accumulation of things. Women concentrate on their outward appearances. It is all for one thing, for one goal: to finally be loved. Some will say that love is caring for another's heart as much as we care for our own. That's as good a description as any. I like that description, actually. I think that when he talks about like men do this and women do that, he isn't saying that every single man does this and every woman does this, and he's trying to just kind of portray the picture of what's going on now, and that kind of generally tends to be true. But some of that stuff, yeah, I don't really, I don't 100% agree that, like, I certainly don't spend my time and money on accumulation of things. In fact, I'm pretty much the opposite. I pretty much try to avoid things altogether. I had to buy a chair for my new apartment here, and I was really reluctant to do it because I just didn't want to have another thing that I owned in my house. So, but I ended up doing it, and it's really paid off. It's a great chair that I can work in and get things done and not strain my neck and my shoulders too much. So, but anyway, that's that definition is pretty good, I think. I'd love to hear if you have your own definition of love. I think it's a tough one, and I talked about this with J.J. Roberts on an earlier episode, and he's got his definition, and there's just so many ways to think about it. Most people don't actually think about it at all. They just think it's a feeling, and that's all they can really describe it as. And it's a tough one, but it's good to think about, I think, because if you don't know what that is to you, then how do you know that you have it, or that you don't have it, or that you even want it? So I think that's a good one. But okay, the next section that I wanted to read here is about the idea of forever. Quote, "Forever is a myth. Why? Because we don't really believe in it. We make long-term promises on short-term feelings. We are so suspicious, so nervous, that we try to capture the future to force, quote, happily ever after, to set it in stone. We seal it with a contract, desperate to convince ourselves that yes, it will last forever. But this is simply blind optimism, wishful thinking, paper promises. It will never work because the future, being only a half-imagined liquid dream, can never be captured or contained. Forever only exists for those who don't try to force it. Forever only exists for those who truly believe in it. When we believe in forever, we eschew the artificial, contrived, and expected edifice of conventional relationship, and instead let the light shimmer on the path just ahead of us. This is the secret to co-creating and nurturing a relationship, because now it is real before our eyes, and only then might it last. There is an upward sloping curve to the journey of a soul, a spiritual line, and when it is transgressed, the whole body suffers. A relationship can only last if the two of them view it with all the requisite wonder and curiosity and communion as a spiritual journey. And by spiritual, I mean spiritual in the broadest sense of the word. Soul-searching, celebration, salsa lessons, a side-by-side, albeit individual, quest for greater understanding. I think this was really well said here, and one thing I wanted to note is that he is writing this book as kind of like, it's like he's talking to somebody. It's like the book starts with him talking to a woman on the train. So some of it he actually addresses her as my love, and I try to cut those parts out where he says that because it doesn't make sense on a podcast. But that's how he's sort of saying it to someone, so it maybe makes more sense. But this idea of the quest for greater understanding, and it's an individual quest, I think that's a good concept to really consider, because he mentions, and I'll read the next section, which talks about the idea of us, but the individual, people think, well, if you're in a relationship, it's not an individual quest, but it actually is, because you're both on this journey. No matter what, you can't be two people combined into one. So you're on this journey, and if you start thinking about it as, well, it's just a quest of us, then you kind of lose sight of your individual wants, needs, desires, and it actually is not going to help. I don't think it's going to help your relationship. I think it's going to hurt it. So thinking of the individual, thinking of your path, what you're wanting to do, what you're wanting to accomplish, and how that matches up with your partner is, I think, a much more healthy way to go, and a much more likely way to have a long-term relationship instead of something that kind of fizzles out because you quote unquote grew apart. Because I think that if you keep those individual desires and individual needs in mind as you move forward, it is much more likely that you can sync up and stay with that person. But maybe at some point it doesn't. It means that you are individually going different directions, and there's nothing that can stop it, and you have to end the relationship, and that can be horrible, and that can be great, and there can be where you look at it as, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, or it could be a new beginning. It could be a new, you could be moving to a different phase of your life, and this person maybe wasn't the right person for that path. So I think that's the most healthy way that I can see of looking at it. So I'll read the next section. It says, quote, "Let's you and I be different. Let us never analyze this, quote, us. Let us just be. Let us trust our love. Let us not expect or demand. Let us stay amazed. Let us only say to each other, I love you today and I want to see you again tomorrow." Is that not enough to say? Is that not complete enough to sustain a relationship through an entire lifetime, or even a quiet evening on the shore? So I really love what he said here. And in fact, I got a little bit choked up when I was reading that. And it's there's something about that present tense, that present of, it's like, I want to be here, I'm here with you today, and I want to see you again tomorrow. There's nothing, I'm not going to talk about something that's in 10 years. We're not living in the future, we're living right now. And the tough thing is that can be misinterpreted as, I might leave you tomorrow, I might leave you the next day because I'm a little bit upset or something. And I think that could be actually the opposite, because the only thing that works really well in life is voluntary relationships, and that goes to everything. That goes to the freedom lifestyle, like the business that you choose, or the career that you choose, getting out of the 9 to 5. That is all about adding more freedom to your life and getting out of obligations, and that applies to where you want to live. Like you may not want to live where you were born, so you take your freedom and you go somewhere else. So, but there's also a case to be made for the other side of the coin. I mean, not everybody wants to travel the world and live this life of like constant change. I mean, some people want that more kind of consistent community and security and things like that, and that's great. It's more about, are you aware that you're choosing that? Are you fully conscious of your choices that you're making? Because that's the really important thing. I think that the way he ends it here, is that not enough to sustain a relationship through an entire lifetime? It definitely is. If you are present and you're in this relationship, you can not easily, but you can be more. It's more likely that you're going to be able to sustain that relationship through an entire lifetime, as opposed to planning on being with someone for the rest of your life, and then sort of taking a lot of things for granted, taking things that you're sort of thinking, well, we're married, so that person can't go anywhere, and then the other way around is like focus it back on yourself. Like you could start thinking, well, I'm married to that person. I can't go anywhere. I've got no freedom here. I've got no choice. I've got to be with them. So when it starts to turn into an obligation, that's when your freedom goes away. So and that's not to say you can't totally work through all that, but if you're already in a situation where, let's say, you're married, that doesn't mean that your freedom is gone for sure. I mean, you can totally work with that as well, but it's just saying that the way you look at it, coming back to the awareness and the consciousness around your current situation and what it means to you. So let's go to the next section, which I really like. Okay, it says, quote, "Picture yourself in this ocean. Feel the water on your skin. Look around at the sights you can see. Now then, here's the question. How deep would you go? Do you picture yourself near the surface where it is easy and fun, translucent and free? Or would you commit to a depth more colorful, variegated, and vibrant? Either way is fine, but each of us tends to prefer one or the other. The man you love might like to swim deep, but you might not be so comfortable there, preferring to swim a little closer to the surface. If he encourages you, you may swim down a little deeper with him because you love him and want both of you to be happy. But if you find you cannot breathe or the pressure is too much to bear, you will have to return to the surface. Or you might convince him to swim with you, light and easy, near the surface, and he will do it because he doesn't want to lose you, but it will never be as satisfying to him as his preferred depth. That's what relationships are like. We all like to swim at different depths at different times of our lives. There is nothing you can do about it. We can swim together for a time, but we can never change the depth the other prefers. Therein lies a lot of our problems with relationships. Trying to convince our partners to swim at our preferred depth, then blaming them when they don't. Finding someone who can swim comfortably at the same depth as you is not easy. You may even wish you could change your preferred depth because you are so in love with him and want it to work. You can't. Yeah, that's something I think probably most people here have experienced that listen to this show, is that you're looking for somebody that you can take this path in life with, and you find someone that's pretty close and you start going down the path with them, and then at some point you realize like they're not, it's like you think, okay, they're going to be on my depth level, and at some point, through talking, through being with that person, they're just gonna slowly kind of come around to my depth level, because my depth level is the preferable way to go. But then what happens is it sometimes is that you find out that person is not able to do this. It's not ever going to happen, and that's when it sadly can end. And that's a frustrating thing, because I think I've been like that off and on through the years. Is like I just think that somebody needs to be meeting me at my level, and you eventually start to beat your head into the wall if they're not ready to do that, or if they're not willing to do that, and it's got to end, because that's never going to be satisfying for either of you. And there is sometimes that I can relate to what he says. Like sometimes I in the past I have wished, like, well, why can't I just have lower expectation? Why do I have to go that deep? Why can't I just stay at the surface? Like he says, light and easy. And there's a lot of people that do want to keep their lives that way, just light and easy and simple, easy and comfortable. But that, that can lead to problems too. And that's not the way I like to swim. So I like to go deep. I think that also the one thing that he didn't mention is, like, the deeper you go, the smaller your pool is. So most people, it is the easy and comfortable thing is the path of least resistance, staying at the surface. And then when you start to analyze things a little bit more, you go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And really this self-realization, the self-acceptance, and the just internal work is where you can go to really greater depths. And I think for me, I'm still going to greater depths. I'm always learning new things and about myself and about love and about relationships. And I think that's the only way that I can function. Like, I can't go back up and go backwards and go, okay, I'm just going to, I just want to sit and watch TV and talk about the weather and things like that, which, that's, for some people that can work for a while. So I'm not going to knock it completely, because sometimes I have a bit of envy for people that don't, like to analyze things too much. It's like, just be happy, just kind of relax, do your thing, but don't question too much. Like, that's kind of the thing that I've never been good at, is I always go pretty analytical and pretty deep into all sorts of topics, and then that can lead to not finding as many people to connect with, but then the ones that you do connect with, it goes to a much more satisfying level. So anyway, that's a lot to say about that section. He has another little section on the idea of forever. He says, as I said before, we make long-term promises on short-term feelings. Women believe a future together is only possible with a promise, but perhaps a future together is only possible if there is no promise. A living in the present with one another, a delighting in each other in small ways every day. Yeah, that's exactly what I was just talking about. I think that's just sounds so perfect. Like, that sounds so amazing, and it's so hard to find. But that's I think if you can get to that point where it's like you're living in the present. It doesn't mean the present is always amazing and perfect and joyful and flowers and roses and whatever. But it means that the more you can be in reality, the more you can experience this person and this relationship, and as opposed to some place off in the distance in the future, which you don't know about. So I think that's a really great way of saying it. And then the book also, he has a lot to say about freedom, and I really like a lot of what he says. So I'm going to read the next part here. Quote, well, someone will say, I have a strong reason why I can't live the life I want to live. Not everyone can be like you and wander the earth at will. Some of us have a family and responsibilities. To which I answer, and? How is there any discrepancy between you living your life in a wide-eyed wonder and your family and responsibilities? Why is not your whole family caught up in a life of magic and adventure? But not all of us can live a free-willing lifestyle like you, some will say. Not everyone can just give up their possessions and home. Yes, well, those who say that are missing the point. Saying that life meaning is about lifestyle is like saying the grapes of wrath is about fruit. I am not suggesting that everyone should give up everything and become a vagabond or run around the world with family in tow, eating beans and wieners from a can. I am not advocating a certain type of lifestyle in any way, but I sure am advocating a type of spirit. Our lifestyle, or how we choose to spend our physical and mental energy, is merely a layer over our spirit, how we choose to spend our spiritual energy. To live in a quiet town, in a quiet suburb, with a quiet job is a wonderful thing, if it is mindfully chosen. This might be a great life, if that is what we truly want, but it should never be a result of personal ennui or obligation, or because we settled. It should be because we have examined our life, and this is what we want above all other things. There is no discrepancy between a man working hard all his life at a simple job that he loves, and that same man living with the singular spirit of freedom in his soul. That man is a fulfilled man. So that really ties in with the book that I talk about all the time, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and the idea of living your life your way and making the choice to do so, and not following along with anyone else's idea of what your life should be. And I think that first part of that section resonated with me, because I think a lot of people have that idea that's like, oh, that's easy for you to do. And I hear that a lot, or not a lot, but I hear that sometimes, like, oh, well, you don't have kids, so you can travel, you can do all this stuff, and you don't know what it's like, and you don't own a house, so you don't have a mortgage. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean that you can't live that way, like he says, in spirit. Like, maybe you want to travel the world, but you have a mortgage and kids. Okay, well, how can you do that still? How can you still do that, what you want to do? Or maybe you can do it in a smaller way that is more doable in your mind, and you can travel in just your area. Maybe you can do more traveling, or maybe there's just another way you can live life. It could even be just in your town. You could be doing a lot more than you do, and exploring different things, different ideas, and really kind of having that wide-eyed wonder with everything that you do, even if it means you never leave the town that you live in. I don't think it has to be world travel, but if it is something that you want to do, there's ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. It's just getting, kind of, people have that comfort zone, and it's tough to leave that, and I totally understand that. But when it comes to your dreams, you don't have a second chance at life. So why wait, and why wait to be free? Nothing's going to happen if you just sit and wait. So it's time to just take the reins and do your life the way you want to do it, not the way that you were supposed to do it, or some mythical idea that you are programmed, or that you have, or this is the way it is, or everything happens for a reason. That's the one that is pretty annoying expression that people will say, everything happens for a reason, but it's not true, because you make that happen. You're going to make it happen, and sometimes things don't go your way, but you can alter things to slant them your way, and there's so many things that you can do. So anyway, that's all I had for today. The book is The Alabaster Girl by Zan Perrian, and a lot of stuff in that book. I just barely scratched the surface. I think there's a lot of value in the book. I think he covers some topics with relationships that I haven't really seen too many other places, and I think it's worth the read. It's, like I said, it's 416 pages or something, and so it's pretty long, but it's worth your time. And I would love to hear if anyone else has read this book and what you have to say about it. The one that I think the companion to this book is the book Psychology of Romantic Love by Nathaniel Branden. That's another great read, and so those two, I think, combined, I think you'll have it all figured out. So anyway, I have a few really exciting guests coming up. We're going to talk about building a business on Facebook, and then I've got another guest who is going to talk about the idea of multi-potentialism, which it means that if you have many passions, what do you do? And then I'm going to talk to a digital nomad that I recently met via Facebook that is traveling around the world right now. And I've got a few other ideas for guests. And so it's going to be a really great November. I hope you stay tuned with us, and go out there and build some freedom this week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Freedom Lovin' Podcast. To break free today, head on over to freedomlovin.com and download our free guide. 7 practical tips to living free in an unfree world.